Now, from Grid Square Echo Mike 48, this is 100 Watts and a Wire.
Okay. Hello, friends. It's Christian. My call sign is Kilo Zero Sierra Tango Hotel. Steve is here, W7UDI. That's Whiskey 7 United Delta India. Well, I didn't catch you doing anything indecent.
No.
Like
just trying to read the posts. My wife is in the chat room and kind of talking about her positive experience.
Cool.
Involved in the hobby and being around it. She grew up. My father-in-law was very active as an amateur, and in fact, a little history here is sure. I got to get out of the way somehow. But the S line, the equipment on the bottom is his station from the early '60s, and that was the station that was used back in 1964 to do foam patching for when the Alaskan earthquake hit. And it was just kind of, they just got on the air and just started passing traffic and making, people up in Alaska from Anchorage were trying to get the word out that they were, okay and made it through the earthquake. And a lot of amateurs in the country stepped up, and my in-laws, both my father-in-law and mother-in-law, were active for many days. I think 3 or 4 days, if I remember the story right, of just passing traffic, making foam patches, or just they get a message from somebody and then make a phone call, and long distance phone calls to family members that were across the country, and just to let them know. So a lot of history kind of in my family here with the hobby. And who was it? Someone just made a comment, and the positive story, was it Ray, or I apologize, that you and I are been a positive influence in mentoring.
There it is.
There it is.
Thanks, Ray. There. And look at Darth Vader.
Darth Vader, nice.
We appreciate that. We don't know. You don't know. I think one of the great things about live streaming is you can actually have this interaction. You never really know until the people can be with you. And I want to be the show that will bring you in. We have some people down in the guest spot now, backstage green room, that we could bring you up and share some stories. Think about people who have influenced you, helped you along, a case where you went out there and radio has helped. Radio won the war, man. If we go back into, we talk about Congress. Congress can cease amateur radio operations, and they've done it during the war. But also, it was probably for the best. It probably was complicated and difficult for hams in those time periods. But you're talking about the wars. But radio also saved the war in terms of the military. And you can still see those radios at like Dayton now. You see the kinds of radios that 2 GIs may have carried heavy, handles on the side, and get the generals so they can get their comms up, and signal cords. All these things are positive. Those are positive things. I just want to share those. And we forget about them until we see them at the inauguration, when the cars are going down and there's 50 black armored vehicles with antennas and whips sticking up all over the place. And you're like, radio, this one, radio. It's all great. So we're sharing those stories. You're welcome to join us. If you have questions, there's a form I dropped in the chat. Please put your call sign anytime during the remainder of the show, and you'll qualify to win the antenna that we're giving away. We only have 2 more of these. We're giving away 1 today and 1 next week. And then I'm cooking up something special. See, I consider myself a cook. I have to keep cooking. And sometimes the food tastes bad. Like this. I put a little Old Bay on it. It tastes a little bit better. So, but there you go. So we have a few people here. I'm going to do one more drop into the, let me see, one more drop in to see if anybody else wants to join in. We have some limited space, but people can kind of cycle through, and we'll keep an eye on the chat as well. Share your stories. If you'd like to join us, the link is now in. Anybody that's down below want to come up and share a story about anybody who's been inspired in amateur radio or radio in general, wave a hand at me. I'll bring you up. Anybody want to do it? Everybody's being shy. Okay, we got a couple. All right, look at this. Look at this. I'm on my best behavior, Pastor Joe. You got
nice.
Oh. The dump button.
There
was something he did that. That's called. There's things like called a Zoom bombing.
Wow, he just
Red Sox bombed us. Son of a. I'm going to pray for you, Pastor Joe. That's wrong. It's completely
Pastor
wrong.
Joe, that's the work of the devil.
And you and Matt, that's the work of the devil. You got to get
Joe. Oh my!
You should lower the lights. Lower the lights.
We need to have a confessional here.
This is something I'm gonna bring him back. Joe, okay. What the hell is?
Yeah, right. So for those of you who were scarred by life by getting dumped in high school, that's what it feels like. What just happened to me? Okay? Still working it out, Christian. Thanks for bringing it back, buddy.
I think there's a little bit in you. It's going to be a work. It's a work in progress. If I can just get you to like another team, maybe another team. Tell me something good about a good side of radio.
Yeah. And there are plenty. And I am so fortunate and blessed in New Jersey, in North New Jersey section, Hudson Division. We have incredibly active 2-meter repeaters here. And it really is a ham fam or a hamily, however you want to call it. And we're really tight. We actually get together socially. I've attended, a couple of funerals of relatives of some of the operators around here. And I want to call out one guy, NJ5R, Jeff. He lives up in Union, Roselle Park, about an hour from here. But Jeff was one of the first people I met on a 10 o'clock traffic net, the United Counties traffic net. And Jeff is one of those guys who is just so level, even-keeled, kind, supportive, interested in what you're doing, always wants to help people out. And, I think that's the kind of person that you're talking about. Definitely, he serves as an officer in his club, the Tri-County Radio Association. His wife is an EMT, and she actually served doing MCOM during 9/11. So, and that's Kilo Yankee 2, Mike, KY2MMM. And her name is Kim. Great call sign. And she's got some great stories to tell. But, I was reading I think it was the January QST, the letter from the president or whatever, that frontispiece. And he was talking about, moving forward and how can we advance our hobby. And he mentioned a couple of things. And one thing that he talked about was, when that person gets their tech license, okay, what happens immediately after? Well, I can tell you what happened to me. I got a phone call from a local operator welcoming me to the hobby. And that still happens. Almost every new operator, I don't know how they do it, but they get a radiogram, through the traffic nets, welcoming them to the hobby. And I think that's really good. So it has been a very positive experience. You'll hear, like if I hear a new call that I haven't heard on a repeater locally, I'll look it up. And a lot of times that call sign was issued last week. And so I make a point of getting on the air, welcoming them to the hobby. I live in Freehold, which is nearby. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. So it's a very supportive environment around here. I know that in some areas people say, the repeaters are dead around here. And I think population has something to do with that. And there may be other dynamics. But things are very active and very positive around here. So, yeah, the hobby's doing well.
Pastor Joe, do you remember the first time that you kind of fell in love with radio and you were intrigued by it? What was it?
Oh, yeah. Well, with the amateur radio, it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. And back in 1982, I got my GROL, my general operator's license, because my intent was to run a radio board. Believe it or not, I was a radio major my first year in college. That got me a job in television. And fast forward 30 some odd years, took a sample test for the tech license, and a lot of the material is the same. Mm-hmm. And, Steve, you've got your GROL. You may remember that 100-question. It used to be second class, and they turned it to general class, right? And
second,
a lot of
first class, and
Yeah, and you know, they'd have these elaborate drawings of schematics, and they'd say, "What's wrong with this circuit?" And it's like, "Well, there's 17 things wrong with this circuit, but you know, they only give you 4 choices." But anyway, falling in love with amateur radio was when I fired up that Yaesu FT60 for the very first time in my living room, and somebody came back, and it was KD2HTZ. Drake lives a couple towns up. Talk to Drake all the time. And
Nice.
that was the magic, you know, when somebody came back and we had a conversation. That's to me, that was the big thrill. For me, this is a very social hobby as much as anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember my father would. Sorry, Steve. Go ahead.
No, go on.
My father would have a CB. He had a CB radio, and he had some kind of strange quad antenna on the roof. Now, I don't know enough about that CB radio, but he would key up the D104. And the lights would flicker, and the neighbors would bang on the walls, and he would just look at me like, you know, he would let him hate. I don't know what the problem was, but I remember the immediacy of someone coming back on the road that you couldn't see, you didn't dial a phone, and he could have a conversation until they faded out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was it was the seed. It led to all of this, but also 30 years of doing this kind of work, and I was just fascinated by it. And they had cool names. He was the Tin Man because his job, he was a sheet metal man. He did heating and air conditioning, so his on air was, they called him the Tin Man, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. But it led me to a career behind this kind of mic.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't until later that I said, I'm going to get my license and see how it all works.
Yeah.
Because but that was the seed. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, very good.
We'll let you go here, 73 for now, and we'll catch up with you. Let's see. We have a few minutes. Anybody want to come up real quick and share a quick story before we head into some questions? Anybody want to come up? All right, everybody's being shy. All right, Jeff, come on up. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Jeff.
We're used to seeing you in the pre-show.
Yep.
You get that press.
Not the big show.
Tell us about your romance with radio.
Mine goes way back to a person I never even met. My great-great-grandfather on my father's side was a telegrapher for the railroad. And then my grandfather worked during World War II on top secret radar, and he used to always tell me stories about that, changing out the tubes and everything else he was working on then. But then on my mother's side, my grandfather down on that side, he never even went to high school, but he used to go to the junkyard all the time, and he'd get electronic bits and junk and take it apart. And he was one of those guys that could do anything. And I remember going down there one day, and he sat me down with him, you know, a room full of cigarette smoke, because back in the day, that's what they did.
They did.
And he flipped a switch on a board that was just sitting on the desk, and he was listening to air traffic flying in and out. He had turned the basement into a radio to listen to the pilots flying in and out. And that's kind of what hooked me on it. And he used to build me things. And I remember one time he built me a metal detector, which was out of an old golf club. And I actually used that years later to find my other grandfather's wedding ring that he had lost years ago.
Nice.
It was the weirdest thing. He had me, he also was in bees. And he had some old hives, and he wanted me to dig a hole so he could bury them because something was wrong with the frames, and he wanted to just get rid of them. Uh-huh. And I'm digging the hole, and I throw a shovel of dirt over my shoulder, and I see this glint out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, that wasn't regular dirt. So I ran home, got my grandfather's golf club handled metal detector that he built me out of a bunch of old transistors, and went searching around, and I found the wedding ring.
Wow. That is awesome.
So that's kind of how I got into it. Just sitting down there listening to him playing around with stuff. He was always working on some electronic thing and turning something into a radio. But he was never a ham. But that's where I got into it.
I've met a lot of engineers over the years who know enough to be in it, you know, and doing it, yeah. But they, for whatever reason, never, you know, went after their license. They get it, they appreciate it, but never did it. Yep. But they do it on the broadcast side, which is interesting. Yeah, I wanted to know how it all worked, and I still may never really figure it all out. But I had always been on this side, depending on guys like Jeff, or other broadcast engineers who are knowing how to get these signals where they need to go. They got my voice out of a box, across the radio, flame throwing it out there, through Baltimore, through Philadelphia, through St. Louis, wherever it was going. And I would just say, wow, if I had any regrets over the 30 years, it was that I didn't ask some questions of these broadcast engineer types back then, because they were on another level. I mean, they were just super smart, and they always had an issue, but they fixed it. You know what I mean? There was like, they could always figure out what was wrong.
Oh, the issue was with the talent.
Oh, drop you out of here. You better be careful. Yeah.
Well, no, that was their issue.
Their issue was they had to get it up on the air, and figure out how to get me out there.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks for sharing that.
No problem.
Oh, that's great, Jeff. That's awesome.
Appreciate that. You're welcome to come by and join us here. It's kind of, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead and talk about it. I was just going to say, I'm going to invite people to come in and share your story if you'd like to today.
Yeah, no, it is bringing back some stories. In fact, I was pretty young when it was around, I don't know, I was still in elementary school and used to walk home by this house, and it had a tower and had a tri-band beam on it. And it's like, what the heck is that? And just, went by it every day, twice a day. And one day the gentleman that owned that house was in the backyard, and I just kind of went up to the fence and I said, excuse me, sir, but what is that? And he just then opened it up, and he goes, well, come on over here and I'll show you. It's, I talked about ham radio. What's ham radio? And then he took me inside, and there was this Heathkit station. I think it was Heathkit, and it was all laid out. And I was like, my eyes got big. Like, oh, wow, that is cool. And that was that little seed. Don't know the guy. I don't know who he was or what it was. It was just like one encounter, and that was it. My buddies and I were like, yeah, we got to get into that. And it just, and then we had these little receivers that we would turn around, listen to the police. This was before scanners. We'd listen to the police traffic. And then I came across these guys just chatting, and it turned out to be his 2-meter ham band and repeaters. And it was like, what's this? And that just cemented it. And that was it. And that was in the 70s. And here we go. And the Pastor Joe bringing up the Grawl and the second class. When I took my second class license, which was the big test, it had a lot of tube theory, even though we were kind of into solid state and everything. But because I had my amateur license, which I got, years before, knowing tube theory and stuff like that helped me pass my second class phone license. And because there was still a lot of test questions that involved tubes, because the test wasn't updated, and because amateur tests still had tubes in it. So it was, I kind of credit the hobby, helping me get into my career that I've been in for the last 40 some odd years, or close to 40 years.
I believe it. I do too. Great story. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We're going to get questions. If we have to go a little over, I want to hear these stories that you have, and we've got some friends gathered. If you want to drop a story in on us, I'll come back at you in just a second. Give us a minute. We'll come back and talk more after this. Did you know that Nuts and Volts has the highest readership of magazines specifically written for the electronics community? For over 40 years, Nuts and Volts magazine has been bringing microcontroller and electronics projects to hobbyists, engineers, technicians, and experimenters around the world. Every issue is full of the latest technology, electronics theory, analog circuit design, robotics, home automation, communications, and more. Join the Nuts and Volts community and become a member today. You get 2 years of the printed magazine and the online digital edition for only $49.95. You also receive full access to all web content with downloadable PDF files, plus the e-newsletter filled with popular projects from past issues. Go right now to nutsvolts.com to subscribe. That's 2 years of Nuts and Bolts magazine printed on paper and delivered to your door for only $49.95. Go to nutsvolts.com today to subscribe. Nuts and Bolts magazine. There's more to build with Nuts and Bolts. And Bioenno Power, offering the best performance lithium iron phosphate batteries for your ham radios. Visit bioennopower.com. That's BIOENNOPOWER.com. Or contact dealers nationwide.
Baby.
A little bit of Bailey's in now. All right, friends, we got some people joining us. Anybody have a story about the love of radio for the betterment of radio? Wave a hand at me. All right, roger that. Here's an old friend. Check it out. Hey. What's up, Paul? How did you fall in love with this beautiful thing we all love?
It goes back to fourth grade. We moved down to Southern Illinois, outside there, and my fourth grade teacher was into electronics, and he had come from Michigan, so he had been building Heathkit since he was a kid, and so he got me interested in like one of these all 50-in-1 electronic project things, and started to get me involved in that, and then convinced my folks to let me try building some stuff. So I built a Heathkit transistor radio. He showed me how to solder and all that, and that got me interested in electronics. And then my next thing was the SW717 shortwave radio, which got me involved and interested in listening to shortwave. And then I'd hear occasionally ham radio. And that got me interested. And I kept seeing, when I was in high school, I kept seeing a car in the parking lot in the faculty staff area with ham plates. And I thought, well, that's interesting. So I asked around, and my dad asked down at City Hall if anybody knew. And this was back when things were a little more casual. And they found out that this guy, his wife was at the high school, and he was a ham, and he actually lived down the road out towards our farm. So Dad made the introduction, and it was Steve Ramsey, K9SR, became my Elmer, and he taught me how to do it. He taught me Morse code, and then it was about time for because this is back when novice exams could still be done by volunteers, but you still had to go to the field office for anything above that. Mm-hmm. So he gave me, it was just another night over at his shack to do practice. And he was teaching me Morse code. So he said, all right, let's see how you're doing. And so we went through another lesson. And when it was all over, he goes, you just passed your test. So he snuck it in on me so that there was no stress. It was just another practice session. He said, no, that was your test. You passed. And then he gave me the theory, and I passed my novice. So, and back then, now that was 1977, and I belonged to the Marissa, Illinois Amateur Radio Club, which I don't know if that still exists today.
I don't think so.
Yeah, that was Heil's Club.
They gave us Dr. Bob, though. He went out.
Back when he still lived in Marissa, and Heil Sound was still there. And it was a huge club. God, we had like 100 and 200 some members.
Maybe they just changed the name of it. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Check.
And so club meetings were always big, and there were always projects and things to do, and a lot of guys that knew a variety of things. So I grew up around adults who played with radio and did things, and that's what really got me interested in it. So it really all goes back to Mr. Wasman, my fourth grade teacher, getting me interested in electronics. And one of the cool things that I like to talk about in relation to Newsline is the Marissa repeater, which I still remember is 14721, would first started carrying Westlink Report when it first came out, because Bob had known Bill Pasternak. And so I remember listening. This was back in the days when you had to dial up an auto patch and dial into the answering machine that played Newsline. And I remember listening to the Westlink Report every week on the repeater back there. And now it kind of freaks me out a bit that now I get to be an anchor with what that had become. So, I mean, I've been listening to or somehow involved in some form of Newsline most of my life, and now I get to be part of it. So
tell us about your first contact, and then I'll let you go. What did it feel like? We all seem to remember these sort of...
and I feel kind of bad about it now. My very first contact was with my Elmer, who was like 2.5, 3 miles away. It was just like ground wave on 40 meters CW. And at the time I was thinking, oh man, I wish my first contact had been something, farther away and cooler. But now I realize that it's fine the way that worked out. It's it was the guy who taught me ham radio, so he was my first contact. And I remember my first station was a Heathkit DX100B transmitter that I had bought, and I had borrowed a Knight R100 receiver from another local guy, and I built a TR switch and all that. So that was how I got started.
Well, my first probably Elmer, my first contact was N2JZ. He helped me set up the antenna. He drove all the way back home 40 minutes later. I mean, everything looked disemboweled. It was just like, oh man. He got back home. He texted me or sent me an email. That's what he's old school. Sent me an email, old school emailer, right? No texting. And I got to the frequency and I heard him calling me. And I remember didn't really even understand if I was doing the exchange properly, like with the formatics of how you give your call sign. And he's a very simple man. He listened to 100 Watts in a Wire in the first couple of weeks, thought it was boring, and I've never heard from him again. Maybe it wasn't that dramatic.
I checked in.
Podcast. Talking's boring, But he hangs out on AM with Heil and the others. But yeah, he was the first contact, and I remember getting his card, and it was just so exciting. It was the first contact, the first card, and then I spent a long time listening. Listened to get the rhythm and the cadence and how people call and how they make that exchange. But it's you'd never really forget it. It wasn't so sexy like yours.
Yeah.
It was, he's 40 minutes away and he's in state, but man, it still was when you hear your call signs coming back to you.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Two quick anecdotes and then I'm done. During my first year as a novice, I had worked some stations somewhere and like a week or so later here in the mail, it comes this envelope from the FCC and I'm like, that's interesting. I wonder what that is. And I opened it up and it was from the monitoring station in Grand Island, Nebraska. Apparently I had been a couple KC out of the novice band.
Oh.
And they had heard. So I all freaked out. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen? So Steve said, well, what we'll do is we'll just double check your radios. He said, and then I'll send something on there that say, I'm an extra. I'm his Elmer. I said, we recalibrated his radios and he's fine. And I send it back in and I never heard back. So it's like, whew. But then when it was time for to upgrade to general, there were 3 of us in the club that had been studying all about my age. And this was back when you had to go to the FCC field office to do the higher classes. And the closest one is Kansas City, Missouri. And turned out that Bob had some Heil Sound business to do in Kansas City. So he said, I'll tell you what, you 3 guys hop in the van with me. We'll leave early and I'll drop you off at the FCC. I'll go do my meetings and my stuff. You guys take your exams. And when you're done, I'll pick you up and we'll come back home. So of the 3 of us, I think 2 of us passed that day and the 3rd one needed to study a little bit more. But that was, I got my general. We had to drive all the way, into Kansas City to do that. So it's wonderful now that we get to have VEs. You can do that locally.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Paul. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Paul.
You be good. We'll catch up with you again real soon. That's cool. Right. Okay, and that's just right down the street from here. I mean, Marissa's not very far. It's interesting. Those the Heil connection. Very nice. I appreciate everybody sharing stories and the chat. Can't wait to read them tomorrow. They move by so quickly that it's hard.
I know. I've been trying to keep up on it.
It's hard to do it. You guys are moving fast, but I'm glad you're communicating with each other. And that is the spirit of radio, these conversations, making these friendships. And one day we'll be able to get back together face to face, eyeball QSO.
Oh, yeah.
Waiting for the day when we got Ham Fest happening in the real. We've got an antenna to give away. Just 2 more. Just 2 more. This is an off-center fed dipole. You have to have your call sign in the chat this week to win the last one. And we're going to give away 1 more next week. February, we'll start into something brand new, I hope. If not, we'll pull off, a monitor from Steve's desk back there, and we'll give that away, and everything will be great. We'll give something away. I've got a plan.
Where did it go?
See, he's ready to give something away. Look at that.
Where did it go? So
An off-center fed dipole.
Got one right here.
Yeah, you can't give that one away. Oh, yes, that's good. Yeah, we didn't even talk about that. See, things you get to talking about, but I'll talk about them.
Baby,
that's coming to Daddy right there. We didn't talk about it, but we will. We'll talk about it. Okay, so we've been doing 12 weeks of giveaways. LDG has sponsored this giveaway. We've had a variety of antennas from dipoles, off-center fed, 40-meter loop. We've had an end fed. We've had a flagpole, which is really interesting. And I'm kind of like, I'd like to try that myself just to see how.
Rosa got that one, didn't she?
I think so. Now she has to find how to get a flagpole.
Get it up.
But good Lord, there goes the algorithm. Steve,
there we go. There we went. We just went downhill.
What happens is you give your call signs. They're collected in the morning and they're put into the big pot. My children will match a number to your call sign, pull it out, bada bing. It's a random. Bada boom. And this week's winner is Michael, KB2.
Michael, nice.
Oscar India Echo. He was in the chat last week and he picks up the antenna this week. He's in New York. We looked him up. He's in New York. So congratulations, Michael. Thanks for joining us in the chat last week. Again, you have some time now. Put your name in there. And this is how we'll give things away as we go. You kind of have to be here. So I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. Click the bell after you do. That way you know when we go live. We do something new. May do a little streaming on the side. Who knows? Breaking news. The notification bell is your friend. And it really works well for me. So make sure your call sign's there. We'll pick the final winner for next week. So that's exciting. We'll give away. What are we going to give away, Steve? The last one of those ones I mentioned. I don't know. It can be anything. What do you want to do?
Let's do another flagpole.
Okay. Flagpole. Write this down. So next week, if you've got a flagpole and you're interested in trying it, clearly sounds like a vertical to me, maybe an inverted L. I don't know. I've never done it. We also have that 40-meter loop that we've given away. I don't know if I mentioned that, but you need some space for that one, respectfully. But the flagpole's good. You got one of those HOAs, the pain in the what's. Maybe a flagpole will work for you. We'll take care of that. All right, this is the time of the show we've all waited for. It's super fun for me. Let me pull up our question page here. This is what happens. You can submit your questions to us through Facebook. You can send them to us through the form here in the chat. I look for questions all over the place.
Well, it looks like Paul Hopman wants us to do another show like this as far as, good stories and things like that.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's funny. I might as well talk about it. We're going to run over a little bit today, but if you guys are patient, I'm okay with it too. I'm going to expand 100 watts in a wire in the way that I'm going to do a second show. We're going to do this show on Saturday mornings. We'll continue on that plan. And then I want to do a second show on Sunday evenings, 8 o'clock Central Time. It's later. I want to be the next Bonanza, Steve. It'll be a place where you come. You can be awesome. We'll have beer at that one.
Beer or wine.
I think a theme needs to be not just of that, and I'll pop that up. Sundays, 8 o'clock. We'll debut it. I don't know that we're ready to do this tomorrow night. The net starts at 7 o'clock. I'm thinking of going live at 8. We could do a little something that looks like the pre-show, how we do our pre-show, run a little bit of the net out, see how that goes. I certainly want to dip in and out of the HF net. We can watch Steve work while we're doing other things. But a second show is coming. Tomorrow may be too soon for me, but that's what I want to do. We'll do a Saturday morning, Sunday evening show, which means I need some producer types to come in, help make some. We want to set up some guests. We want to have people. I need people to talk to, but I'm not looking to talk to the same old people. The same people that we see on a lot of the channels. They're out there. I want to talk to people like you who are checking this out, who are out there working in radio that we may have not have made a contact before. Keep this theme of the spirit of radio, the reasons why we all come.
We want to hear your stories. That's what we want to hear. Yes.
So, there are some YouTube people who are great, do great shows, and we'll have them on as we go, as we need to. But the focus is bringing people in who are normal, just normal, regular people, you know. And if you want to come and talk, we can do these sorts of things. So look forward to that. I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be cool to do a Sunday evening thing. I can dip in the HF net. We'll see Steve working. Maybe Ian may be gone at that time. That's kind of the time he gets off. Mm-hmm. And I'll shape it. We'll put some different things together. So if you're interested in that, you can drop me a line. If you know cool people that are doing great things, interesting things in ham radio or radio in general, let's stay on the positive side. Give the people an opportunity, other hams a chance to come tell their story. And that's all I got to say about that, as far as Gump would say. But yeah, this is the time where we do some questions. I'm excited about having questions. Everybody's got a question for me or for Steve. Lots of them to go through. And I'm going to pull them up now. So are you ready, Steve?
Let's go.
Okie dokie. Our first question this week comes from Kenneth. Kenneth says, is there such a thing as a handheld 10 through 80 meter radio that also has a battery mount on the radio? Anything in history ever done anything like that? I know there's man packs and
those, I don't know about 80 through 10.
How big would the antenna whip need to be to get you on 80 meters in your hand? Holy cow, Kenneth.
Yeah, I mean, well, it all comes down to perspective. You know, if you got small hands, it's have to be a small radio. If you got big, meaty hands, you know, if a sizable radio would still be small. But that would be, that'd be an interesting one.
The Zygu, that Zygu thing we played around with earlier in the year around the Fallout, that would do all the bands. Now, I don't know about the antenna to that thing, though. I mean, clearly you could connect an antenna to it. Handheld, I'm thinking that you could do this in your hand, though. The Zygu is about the size of a brick, very tiny.
And what about the 705? The
705 you could carry.
Yeah,
and you could mount the antenna, but I don't know that you could do 80 meters. I think the 80 meters of this is kind of throwing me.
Well, I've seen, you know, Dayton, you know, we got the guys wearing their man packs and stuff,
right.
And
they're super cool. But
you can have like a Zygu into a chest pack or something, and then just have a metal frame backpack to mount your ham stick or whip or whatever. So yeah, that to me would be the closest on the handheld size. I mean, it wouldn't be, you know, not like an HT, like a dual band HT size.
Think of your rubber duck or your, you know, a different antenna that you put on your HT, and think about what you'd have to do for 80 meters. I think I just, you know, you could have you could probably figure something out, but I mean, you would need a tuner for sure. I mean, imagine trying to tune up a whip on your back as you're walking. It's funny that you bring it up. I don't have the exact answer for you, but it had me thinking. Was there?
But it's a good question. That's awesome. That's out of the box thinking.
Yeah.
I like it.
Well, we appreciate that question. And I don't know if you find what you're looking for. I'd look at the Zygu or the 705 and see what you come up with. The antenna of it is what I don't know. All right, we've got a question from Edwin. What is your best winter field day item?
Heater.
Yeah, long johns, things that keep the stones and your rear end and your hands. Me, I don't know. The older I get, man, my hands are like, dude, I don't care if you put on mittens, you put on whatever you're going to put on, but you need to put your hands in something. You start with your pockets. So yeah, the heat probably is the first, but I don't know that he's going in that direction, Steve. No. So we'll shift toward equipment. Now, I guess I'll go first. I think having a multi-band antenna might be good for me. I'm thinking of my setup, and I think I want to be on a 20 and a 40, and I don't want to have to bring them up and down in the cold. We don't know what we're expecting on this day. It could be a nice day, and you don't mind putting a mono band up there, but I usually tie in a scenario to my field day activities because I may not be with a club. So I may say, all right, this is the situation. You got to have this, and what are we going to do in case of this? So I put a situation in my mind that may not be part of the actual, the drill itself, if you will. but I would be carrying a monoband antenna probably for 20 and for 40. But to be practical in the cold and to save my hands, I'd go with an off-center fed that I knew would work at 25 feet. Mm-hmm. But that's just me. Steve, is there something in your...
I would go with that too. The off-center fed or a vertical with with your tuner. I'm kind of looking at something that you could set up pretty easily, quickly, and you can set it up with wearing gloves, if depending on where you're located at. Because if you're in, Finland, where it's damn cold 3 months out of the year and cold 9 months, you're going to be wearing gloves. And so something that's not going to require some fine motor skills and where you can, quickly set up and efficiently set up is what I would look at for winter field day. The equipment is pretty much all the same. It's and then where your shelter is going to be or how you're going to set up will dictate with that. But I'm thinking, one antenna to cover as many bands as possible, and the OCF is probably a good one, or a vertical that you can use with a tuner and go from there.
And your gloves. Now, I mean, you may be thinking to yourself, and maybe you're a younger person, you're thinking, oh, I don't need that. But I can tell you, the older that you get, you ain't operating much radio if your hands are cold. And other body parts become cold, feet and head and hands. You're cooked. So you have to you got to change your mindset to these little practical things sometimes. Mm-hmm. And you know what? You'll forget your gloves. And guess what? Who's going to have an early day? It's the one without the gloves, man. So yeah, I'm going to go with the multiband and some mitts, man. I got to keep these hands warm. The arthritis wants to shut me down if I don't. All right, Chris is here. This is a two-parter here. I'm going to read you through it. Getting into HF, I have the Xiegu G90 and just got the PAX 100. It's a 100-watt amp.
Okay.
I have a radio station tower about a mile down the road from me, AM, FM. This tower overloads my HF rig here, making them unusable at times. What can I do to fix this for under several $100?
Oh, that's just we're getting front end overload. So that's
tough. What do you make this out to be? He's saying he's got a tower nearby and it is just smoking his signal out, and he's getting pushed down, or it's noise.
It's just front end. I'm thinking it's front end overload. I'm not. I think is the Xiegu a kind of an SDR receiver, because SDR receivers.
You can update it.
They can get overloaded because what it's doing, it's looking at the whole band, and then you're just kind of taking a slice of it. So kind of need a bandpass filter there, but what would be kind of cheap to do that? We need something to notch out the broadcast. I know I've seen people dealing with that where they have an AM station not too far from their place, and it's just wreaking havoc and overloading their front end. But an SDR receiver is really susceptible to that, and I think the Xiegu is. So have to find something that would be. Well, the thing is to notch the AM and filter that out. So I'd have to think about that one. But I'm thinking notch would be the cheapest. They make bandpass filters that contesters use it a lot. So where they have multiple stations and this one's just only going to pass, say, 15 meters. This one's going to pass 20 meters, and you got to switch them in. But they get pretty pricey, and finding something a little more, economical. And I'm thinking, well, let's try to eliminate the AM signal getting into the radio, and maybe some kind of notch filter or to filter out or notch out, or basically it shorts out that particular AM signal. FM, I wouldn't worry about that. That's not going to be the issue. It's the AM, I think, is overloading your Xiegu radio.
Okay. Hope that helps you out there, Chris. Thanks for the question. We have another Chris now that has a question. What software does everyone use for logging? I want something simple to start, but full featured for future. Got to say, early on, just up front, I had I started like most hams do. A couple of the old schoolers taught me early on, and it was paper and pencil. I still do very much, but I know he's looking for software. And eventually I did graduate to a digital, software. I use a thing called MacLogger DX, and it was on the recommendation of a very good friend of mine, another ham, Kilo India 9 whiskey. And he said, this is what I'm using because it's a Mac-based program. It's a little pricey, but it has some great features, and I bought it once. You know what I mean? It's not like you got to keep buying these things over and over, and it depends on what operating system. But that's what I use. It's called MacLogger DX, and for me, I like it. Now, Steve probably uses something a little bit different. What are you using, Steve?
I'm using the N3FJP logging program. And one of the reasons I've used that is that, and you pay for it, it's that you're supporting another amateur that's, providing us a product. It's a Windows-based software, and it also has rig integration. And so there's a number of them out there. HRD is another one that you can do rig control that has logging format on it. And there are some free ones out there, but sometimes you get into one program and then it doesn't get updated anymore, and then it just kind of goes by the wayside. I kind of went towards a paid program, and he regularly updates it. Scott's, I think, is his name, N3FJP, and he has a number of other programs. So you could buy the licensing for one, and I just bought the full suite because there's all the different contesting programs. I just download whatever one I need at the time. Right. And it integrates with the radio, and it's so when logging, it's already puts in the frequency, the band, and just takes care of that. So support, guys that are out there, making software for us, and it's not that expensive. And
it's worth saving up for. And like you said, you do help another ham. Exactly. For me, I was a little leery, and I know hams out there, we have this thing of being cheap, or
frugal.
Frugal is a nice, correct term, I think you'd say. And I get that. And there is some free stuff out there that works well for other people. At the time where I went from paper to a software, I had about 1,000 contacts. And that's not a lot, except I had to manually put every contact in to the software. I didn't want to risk having a software that may or may not be around, like Steve's just mentioned. It may not upgrade. It may not have, a life. I didn't want to have to do this again at 3,000 contacts, because doing that by hand is like, oy. So anyway, that's why I went, and I paid a little bit more for it. You got to do what you need to do. But for me, saving up was worth it. My comfortable operating system, which is I'm a Mac guy. I do work with PCs as well, but I'm a Mac guy at home here and mostly. So that's what I did. It was good. MacLogger DX. They're not a sponsor. They're not cheap, but they've served me the whole time I've had it. And if I've got another, upgrade, they let me know. Hey, new upgrade. Want to do it real quick? Just take a second.
Yep, exactly. I just had a new upgrade on my logging program. So there's the support's great. There's a lot of Scott maintains the web page, and there's a lot of how-tos on how to set it up if you run into problems, and that's what's nice about it. I mean, there's some of the free stuff is out there, and you can go from there. But I want to support our fellow hams that are given to the hobby. Yes, he's making some money out of it, but time is worth money, and he's providing a product, and it was recommended by others, and they've been happy with it, and I've been happy with it. So you go look at the N3FJP suite of logging programs. There's others out there. What Christian's using on the Mac is awesome, and there's a few others out there. So there's
see what
they're out there. See what works for you.
All right, we've got time to take one more. Okay, our friend November 9, Pole. It's my Polish brother up there near Chicago. I'm getting nasty RFI from my off-center fed. Should I drop that and put up a fan dipole in its place? Now I got to get you. Go ahead and dissect the RFI and what may be going on here, Steve. What are you thinking? Look at that face.
I think you're still going to get, even if you put up a fan dipole, you're still going to get the RFI. There's something radiating out there causing RFI issues. So we just had in the chat room earlier today, Ricardo found his RFI issue, which was his cameras. It was the power supplies that were causing a spur. So I wouldn't put the blame on the antenna. Any antenna, you're probably still going to have RFI. You got to nip the RFI at the source and find out where it's at. But I'm kind of curious as to why you think the off-center fed dipole is the source of the RFI. It's we got a few more questions to ask about the question.
But, I found some. So yeah, I'm with you, Steve. I tend to think it's not that. One of the things that I think brings in RFI, and it happened here. I live out in the country, so I don't have a lot of opportunity for that. And I'm under LED lights at the moment, and I'm not hearing stuff. Everything's. What gets me, man? What gets me more than anything, and he may be talking about something completely different, but those stupid wall warts that you can get for about $2 anywhere in the world to plug in whatever crap you want to have. Man, I talked about it in the show at some point about tracking down and troubleshooting and narrowing it down and starting at the biggest thing, which could be your antenna, your coax, and work your way to the radio and down to the jumpers and some stupid loose thing. I've changed out all my connectors, all my jumpers, nothing. What is it? Stupid wall wart for me. Wall warts have got me more times than not with RFI than I care to even think about. And I guess they're not all made equally. I don't know the makeup of these things.
They're basically switching supplies.
They're just like the stupid little thing. They come in everything. Oh, you got some lights like the Steve lights behind us and Steve. Mm-hmm. They come with their own little power thing. Are they good or bad? But so that may or may not be his issue. But I've narrowed it down from my antennas all the way down to the shack, down to the jumpers, down to everything. Changed them all out, only to find this stupid wall wart was giving me this noise. And, I took it outside, I shot it, stepped on it, buried it, ripped it, cut it up all the way down. Like, I don't know if that's the kind of noise he's getting or if it's something else from a power line or whatever. But is there an easy way or a first place to start, Steve, looking into it? We hear about taking your transistor radio around and things like that. What do you suggest he do?
Well, first, I think the easiest is to turn around and get your radio. And we're going to make an assumption here that your radio is 12 volts. And so if you can get your radio or the receiver hooked up to the antenna on battery source. And then just kill the power to your house. Just flip it at the main and shut everything down and see if the noise goes away. If the noise goes away, then, okay, it's local. It's something that you have control over. Then you got to start going down. Okay, where is the noise coming from? Is it an appliance? Is it like the washing machine, or is it the HVAC system, the dishwasher? What is generating? And then start narrowing it down. And you might have to, turn off individual circuit breakers and kind of figure out, okay, this is where it's coming from. That's if it's in your own house. If it's outside of your house, that becomes trickier on how to try to track down
your neighbor's solar panels or
solar panels, lightning arresters that are on the power distribution system, and is another one. Your neighbors, my 80 meter problem, I think, is my neighbor's shop. He's into woodworking. I think his LED lights in his shop are causing an issue with me. I have no control over that, other than I suspect that's the problem. And if he has his shop lights on, then I got this noise issue. I got to work around on 75 meters. Oh well. But if in your case, Christian, it's the wall wart. I had a situation with a battery tender charger, a cheap one from Harbor Freight. It was a $20 tender, and it tore up the whole HF band. I mean, it literally was just, when that thing was plugged in and operating, it just wiped out the HF band. And that was a noise generator. So there's a number of things. The only other thing, back to the antenna, there is you see it mostly with dipole antennas, is kind of a, when there's rain or snow, it's a precipitation, or precip static. As the raindrops or the snowdrops hit the antenna wire, there's a difference in charge, and that causes static. And there's way, typically if you have a balun and or any DC continuity antenna like a loop or something, that's usually a non-issue. But that's typically dipoles suffer that if you don't have a balun there. And so there's the precip static that is equated with the antenna. But most RFI issues is we're generating it man-made. Basically, it's not naturally caused.
All right. Thank you all for those, and please use the form. I'll drop the link to the form again on our social media, stuff like that, and I'll pull them. If they were in the chat, we'll pull them in the morning as we pull the names. Thanks for stopping by and give it. We went overtime. Today, but you know what? We were sharing the positivity of radio. We got a little bent earlier in the week, a little offended. I think that's fair to say. We were a little offended by that crap. Mm-hmm. And that was not warranted. Do your job. I'm even going to start. Do your job. Track down what you need to track down. Track down the offenders. Don't throw us all in there and give us the shaky finger. We didn't need that. But we came out of this with something positive. And today we shared stories about, and I think we should do this every week. We should just pause, bring someone new in to tell us a story about how they fell in love with the radio and why it's important, why they care.
Or they continue to be in love with radio. That's not the first love, but the continuation.
This is a romantic. So this is the show about romance of radio, and like here goes a new algorithm: romance with radios.
And Betty White.
Betty White. You gotta get Betty White in there too.
Oh God, yeah. We're gonna work her
for her. Oh Lord, help us, Pastor Joe. And call our pastor, the in-house pastor, to keep us together. Yeah. All right, friends. Thank you for putting your call sign. If you came in late, put your call sign in the chat before we sign off here. Comment on anything you've heard today. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe, click the bell. Look for a second edition, a Sunday evening edition of 100 Watts in a Wire. It's developing. Going to need some producer leg work type folks to come in and kind of help balance out things and make some contacts and things like that. So there'll be opportunities as we grow if you want to kind of volunteer your effort and join us here on the show. Steve, thank you so much for staying overtime. My bladder,
no problem.
I think we've been talking so much. I have not been drinking enough. Usually by this time I would have exploded. They'd have just been like, he left. Where did he go? Bathroom.
We'll be back.
We'll be back. Appreciate you guys. Hold on. I want to wave here a little bit. Look at these little people.
Hello, Jason. Hey guys.
Beautiful kids. Hey, Jason.
Hey, Jason. How you doing, buddy? He's muted, but
good to see you. No, it's all good. Just want to say hello to the kids. That's what it's all about.
That's what it's about. Thanks, Jason, for sharing.
And all your comments. We had so many comments come in. We're really figuring out the best way to tackle your comments, but have your conversations with each other. That's important too. Keep all that conversation going. Comment after the fact. And tomorrow night, it looks like we're going to be full strength with net control operators. I think what I'm going to do, since we kick off at 7:00 Central Time for the net, maybe I'll carry part of that when I get going with the Sunday evening edition of 100 Watts in a Wire. I still want to carry over, and Steve works a little bit later, so he'd be on the air as we'd be kicking off this, and he'd be there, and we could have him drop in and see him and all that sort of stuff. I'm getting it together in my mind. Maybe after another sandwich, I'll have a little more details, but it's coming. Let me show you. I'm working on it. I'm working on our debut. Where is it?
There it is.
Our debut. It's going to be Sunday night, 7 o'clock Central. Mark it down. But moreover, after you subscribe to the channel, go ahead and hit the bell, because that's going to let you know exactly when. And today I've sent an urgent message to Steve, like, I don't think I'm going to make it. I don't know what I've done here, but I really...
Oh, it was a little panic this morning.
So there was a panic, and I finally got it 1 minute till I figured it out. And I was like, holy moly. You know where I figured it out? YouTube. I was searching YouTube, and I'm getting messages, little panic messages, and you were trying to help me. I was like, and I'm watching the lady on here. I'm like, I'm looking at the lady, I'm looking at my camera, and I was like, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you change it back. All right, guys, 73. We look for you tomorrow. Look for the notification for us to do our net tomorrow night, and more information coming on the Sunday evening thing. Steve, appreciate you, man. Thanks for coming and getting up early.
Anytime.
And we'll do it again
next week.
73 for now, friends.
See everyone on Sunday.
Sunday. Be there. 7 o'clock Central Time on the air. On the air.
Exactly.
We use NetLogger. You can find out where we are on NetLogger, and we post to social media. 73. We'll see you guys there.
73 all.
We'll see you tomorrow.
To join the 100 Watts in a Wire community, visit 100wattsinawire.com.